but the quality of the porcelain, the age of the porcelain, it was outstanding. So Nossa Senhora de Consolação stays today as the largest remain of wood structure of a Portuguese ship, worn out, to oxidized. And there was also an alidade, which is a part of the astrolabe. There are 106 astrolabes in the world. I have been lucky enough to participate in the finding and recovery of 7 of them. Hello everyone and welcome to Underwater Adventures with Alex Mirabal. Today I will present you the top 10 archaeological discoveries I have made. So stay with me and let's dive into it. Before presenting the list of these 10 discoveries, I want to point out a couple of things. First, as I have mentioned in many other episodes, when I say my discoveries, it doesn't mean that I personally did every discovery. It has been always my team. Maritime archaeology is a team activity. It's impossible that Alex goes around in the world and finding stuff. It's not like that. It's a team. And sometimes even the discovery of something made by the third party, it comes to you and your team, you have a relevant input in that discovery. So that's the first thing I want to point out. It's a teamwork, so not everything is like just Alex discovery. Second, the list that I will present today is made by, as the title says, my top 10 archaeological discoveries, is because they are selected, these discoveries are selected because of the archaeological importance. And in the archaeological importance, it comes not the monetary value. This has nothing to do with what thing is more valuable in terms of money, but with the new information that provide to the field of archaeology, history, and research in general. Also, I want to mention that the order in which these discoveries are presented in the video, I selected to make them chronologically. So from the first ones I did to the last ones, because it would be a little bit complicated to assess the importance of each one. I cannot put the most important to the least important because it is very subjective.
Yeah, understood. So this is a very personal list made by the impact that these discoveries have had in the field of archaeology or history, or the importance that they have, but it's not an importance list against each other because that's very subjective. You could not do that.
Exactly. I try to avoid that, so I put them chronologically.
Yeah.
I could have put them alphabetically, but because,
Totally.
because it's actually, as they are subjective in their nature, it is very difficult to say, okay, this is more important than this one. So I will list them chronologically from the earlier ones that I made to the later ones. Okay, so let's start by number 1. Okay,
Yeah.
Let's start by number 1. The 7 astrolabes I have been lucky to find or being involved in the finding in the world. I have mentioned astrolabes in other episodes. Astrolabes are very precious artifacts in terms of information and quality. The astrolabes were very important in the entire navigation around the world and the discoveries of the, at that moment, powers, naval powers. The astrolabes played a very important role as accurate navigational instrument at the time. Astrolabes are very important pieces of technology for
It's
the
like
time.
a compass.
Well, it's like a GPS.
Exactly, like a GPS.
Okay, back then, but for them it was as important as a GPS today for any navigation.
That's what I mean. It's the top 5 main instrument to be able to do the job that they were doing.
Exactly. Yeah. The astrolabe for these long navigations that the Portuguese and the Spaniards and the English, what these navigations they did, astrolabes were almost mandatory. I mean, every serious or important ship commanding a fleet would have 1, 2, or 3 of these astrolabes on board. What happened also with the astrolabes is that today the International Database of Astrolabes, which was updated in 2016, so quite recently, let's put it this way, it only registers 106 astrolabes and parts of them. These are the 106 mariners' astrolabes which are known in the world. Anything in this planet that is in the number of 106 is rare. I mean,
yeah, sure.
there are more countries than that. There are...
For sure. There are more threads in my sheets than that. Because for something so important, even for me, that we've been doing this content for a while, I did not know it was such little numbers. 107 is very short, very small amount of astrolabes of anything.
It is impressive. That's what I mentioned, that anything in this planet that is in the number of 106 is by force rare. And these things are astrolabes were replaced by the octant and the sextant for navigation somewhere in the beginning of the 18th century, so 1700 something. But that makes them even more rare and more difficult to find. And normally when you find these astrolabes, they provide a lot of information for your research, because they usually have the name of the person who made it, the year, they have different scales, so you can interpret different techniques of navigation. So they provide a lot of information for the archaeologists. As I said, there are 106 astrolabes in the world. I have been lucky enough to participate in the finding and recovery of 7 of them. 2 were in Cuba. Well, not 2 were in Cuba. 2 were in the Inés de Soto Wreck in Cuba. I have mentioned it in other episodes. One with the date 1555, another one without a date, but because it was already too damaged, too worn out, too oxidized. And there was also an alidade, which is a part of the astrolabe, is this arm, which is a part of the astrolabe, is the one you use to look at the sun or the stars, which must probably belong to a third astrolabe in that wreck, because it didn't fit with any of the other 2. There we have already 3. Then it was in Francisco Padre where we found these 2 Portuguese astrolabes with the infamous Sebastião de Gois, that nobody knows who Sebastião de Gois was. Well, these 2 also for the end of the 16th century, that will already make 5. Then the 6th one was found by my team in Cabo Verde in the Pasapau wreck, the wreck inside the cave, which you could see the episode here. That was also a unique astrolabe because it was coated in silver, something that was not a practice, and it has a date 1645, made by Nicolau Rufo. And also in the Lady Burgess, we found an isolated alidade, another of these arms of the astrolabe, found in the Lady Burgess of 1805, which we didn't find the astrolabe that it belonged to. That was also one of the shocking finds I have made in shipwrecks, because the Lady Burgess was not supposed to be navigating with an astrolabe in 1805. They already had different navigational instruments which were more accurate and light than the astrolabe. So in number 1 are the 7 astrolabes I have been lucky to find in my career. Number 2, the Inés de Soto Wreck. And here I'm mentioning a wreck instead of an artifact, because the wreck itself gave us a lot of information. First, so far has been the oldest wreck found in Cuban waters. That was found in Cuba in the year 1991, and it provided us with a lot of new information we had. From the total of 17,768 silver coins that we recover, that, by the way, made the largest amount of silver coins found in the Western Hemisphere.
See, I was just about to say ever.
No, actually in the New World, what they call the New World, minted before 1572. That obviously gave us a lot of new information about the numismatics of the time, because you have to base your studies in the coins. The more coins do you have, the bigger the sample is,
more data,
and the better the data you collect. So Inés de Soto had, let's say, that as a very good contribution to human knowledge. Also, within these coins, there were 53 of these coins were 3 reales. For the ones who are familiar with the numismatic of the time, it will come a little bit as a shock, because the coins were made, the denominations of the coins were set by halves. So the 8 reales coin, that was the bigger one, then it comes the 4 reales coin, then it comes 2 reales coin, and the half reales. This was the normal coinage. So they were all divided by 2 till you get to the smaller one, to half a real. What happened with the 3 reales? There was an experiment. They minted these 3 reales coins in Mexico only for 1 year. So obviously it was a small production. It is very difficult to find 3 reales today.
That is incredible.
It is. It's like a note of $7.
100%. And what I find even more interesting is when you were saying it, I understood from the way that you were saying it, I understood 3 reales, one of each. So 1 real, 1 real, 1 real, not coins of 3 reales.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So I was like, okay, got it.
Yeah, it was the denomination of the face value of the coin, 3 reales.
The face value.
It's like, again, if today you would have a $7 bill. It's weird, it's strange. And if it was produced only during 1 year, forcibly it would be a small amount in comparison with the millions of coins that the Spanish produced in America or in Spain for the trade. So it was a very nice discovery. Obviously, the Inés de Soto, from the numismatic point of view, there were other stuff like huge silver discs and some other little stuff that also gave us new information. But I believe that this wreck should be in this list because of the numismatic information that provided. In number 3, the Ernest Schimmelmann, the wreck that we found in Cape Verde in 1999 because of the cargo it had of Swedish copper plate money. As I explained in another episode, those were the largest coins ever minted in the history. That's big Swedish copper plate money that amounted, sometimes it got the weight of 10 kilos.
You needed to carry it to go to the market to buy 4 potatoes.
Exactly. I mean, I'm being Swedish. These guys mostly transported, the purse of these guys were sledges, you know, these snow
yeah, exactly.
that you have to take to the market with your change. So
yeah.
It is a very rare type of currency. There have been very few finds of these coins in the world along the history because they were demonetized somewhere in the late 18th century.
Somewhere when they started having back pain.
Exactly. It was the first country that came up with the paper bills.
Yeah, exactly.
And they have all right to do that and to be the first ones because, I mean, how difficult and how cumbersome that coinage would have been.
Yeah, they hadn't invented chiropractors yet or osteopaths. They were like, yo, we need to change this. No.
Let's say that I suspect it's the coins who are giving us
Yeah.
back pain. So it was a very interesting find from the numismatic point of view. There was only one prior find or discovery of these coins to our wreck, that it was in South Africa, the wreck of the Nicobar, that was found a few years earlier than ours by my friend Jimmy Herbert. It's a great researcher that made actually the best research you can find today about Swedish copper plate money was made by him and Dr. Hallström in a very nice book. And again, any artifact that has been found twice in history is a rare artifact. So
Yeah.
number 4, the Espadarte. The Espadarte, I have talked about that wreck repeatedly.
In every episode.
Yeah, because it had a lot of stuff which were unique. The Espadarte sunk in 1558 in Mozambique, coming from India. It's a Portuguese ship that was coming from India with a very special cargo of Chinese porcelain because it was not that large. There have been other cargoes, we will get there as well, other cargoes which plenty of more pieces than that, but the quality of the porcelain, the age of the porcelain, it was outstanding. It was something that is very, in a large cargo you find normally 2 or 3 pieces with this quality, and in the Espadarte cargo all porcelain was like that because it was very early. It was 1558. One of the reasons why the Espadarte is here, not only because of the quality of the porcelain, is because probably, this is something that needs a little bit more research, but probably was the first consignment of Chinese porcelain from Macau to Portugal. Why is this important? Because in that moment, the Chinese and the producers of this porcelain haven't identified Europe as a solid market. So they were not producing porcelain to send to Europe. They were selling their own porcelain.
Within Asia.
Yeah, their own porcelain, the porcelain that they use. And that made the porcelain incredibly, that made the porcelain of much higher quality than the porcelain that was produced later on massively to send to Europe as a commodity. So what we witnessed in the finding of the Espadarte and the porcelain that was carrying was like a very genuine porcelain in the way of the artistry, the traces, the stamps on the bottom of the objects with the phrases, with the thoughts that they put there. It was very genuine. It's from the Emperor Jianjing time. The quality of the porcelain of Jianjing Emperor is recognized, and one of the best qualities within the Ming dynasty. It's an emperor who had a quite long ruling, about 47 years. Funny enough, he died after drinking an apothecary potion that's supposed to give him everlasting life. So apparently,
Oh my God.
yeah, apparently that backfired.
The irony, I love it.
But it was what happened. So the Espadarte is in this list first because of the porcelain, and then because also it had remains of wood structure of the hull, which is not that common in early wrecks, and this can be considered the oldest Portuguese wood structure remains that has been found, meaning that older than the Espadarte, I am not aware of any other wood structure with coherence that is still assembled that could help in the study of the naval construction of the early 16th century from the Portuguese. So it has these two very important things, the porcelain and the wood structure of the ship, that will certainly put the Espadarte in this point in the list. Number 5 comes Nossa Senhora de Consolação. Nossa Senhora de Consolação from 1608, a Portuguese ship that was sunk during the Battle of the Dutch against the Portuguese in Ilha de Moçambique, in the island of Mozambique. The Dutch tried to steal the ship. The Portuguese fortress, they start firing on them. They have to let the ship go. The ship drifted and sank in the north side of the entry of the bay in the island of Mozambique. For reasons that are difficult to know today, apparently some meteorological events after the sinking allowed for a fast coverage of the wreck with the ballast stones and everything, allowing for the conservation of this wood in a remarkable state, knowing that it sunk in 1608. So this wreck is in this list because it has been the largest portion of Portuguese ship from the 17th century found ever. And we study that wood. I think there is another episode we talk about the photomosaic we made on the wreck, the study of the wood structure. It was precious from the archaeological point of view and from the knowledge point of view, the amount of information that we could retrieve from that unusual situation of having so much wood structure surviving. So the Nossa Senhora de Consolação is here by her own merits. It has actually helped us a lot in better understanding the Portuguese shipbuilding techniques that allowed them to go all the way to India and to Japan and everywhere, because the Portuguese were everywhere.
And I think privately also, because the episode that we go a bit deeper into this is coming out this week in Halloween. Also, I would say that this wreck would have made the list also for your top most interesting or important discoveries, also for the techniques of maritime archaeology, right? Because this was one of the first introductions, at least in your team, of certain techniques to record artifacts.
Yeah, well, if I would make a list of projects or shipwrecks in which we had to be very creative to be able to do our job, certainly Nossa Senhora de Consolação would be, if not in the top, it would be in the top 2. So yes, the Nossa Senhora de Consolação, it was a very important contribution to the knowledge of the Portuguese naval construction techniques of the 17th century and 16th century, because actually the ship was built in the 16th century. It is the largest remain of a Portuguese ship, of the wood structure of a Portuguese ship ever found. But we also found another one nearby, the Nossa Senhora de Consolação. Nearby is about half a mile away, which it has no name. I believe it's the Tiger of Portugal of 1500 something, which by the remains you can see, it is a huge ballast pile. If the Nossa Senhora de Consolação had about 250 tons of ballast, this one may have probably double of that ballast. It is huge, the ballast pile. And for the inspection, the primary inspection we did in that wreck, let's call it the Tiger. I'm not sure it's the Tiger. Nobody can be sure it's the Tiger. We haven't excavated yet. The code name was IDM 008 because it was the 8th wreck we found around Ilha de Mozambique. So that one is more accurate, IDM 008. And we, exploring around this ballast pile, we discovered that there is wood remains on the knees, and by the measurements we took without still removing any ballast or whatever was still visible, it is a little bit larger than Nossa Senhora de Consolação. So Nossa Senhora de Consolação stays today as the largest remain of wood structure of a Portuguese ship, but it's at another...
But we will see if it will be dethroned.
It will not last too long because it has the IDM 008 quite nearby, and for sure is bigger than Nossa Senhora de Consolação. That wreck is to be excavated. Once it's excavated, maybe it will come in one of these lists way in the top because it's simply impressive. If Nossa Senhora de Consolação already is, imagine one that is bigger and probably older. In number 6 comes São José, my beloved São José from 1622, found by us in Mozambique. It was sunk during battle with the combined fleet Anglo-Dutch ships that were chasing Portuguese ships because they were in war with Portugal. And they sank the São José in the area of Mochinqual. I have mentioned the São José many times because of the bronze cannons that she was bringing that helped us a lot in the research. By the account of the battle from the Padre Jerónimo Lobo priest, who was very accurate and helped us finding the ship. I will make an episode in the São José, in the ship itself, so I will not linger too long here in the story of the São José because I will tell you in another episode. And the main reason why the São José is in this list is because she was transporting a lot of coins, a lot of silver coins. The Dutch and the English retrieved, they reported 68,000 cruzados, which I will explain now what that is. The Portuguese, they say they managed to save also 68,000 cruzados, and reportedly the ship sank with 18,000 cruzados in 9 boxes. So what we found was these 18,000 cruzados in 9 boxes, many centuries later, and it was an amount of 25,000 silver coins. What that means that with such a big amount of coins, also you have the chance of studying the numismatic of the time much better than if you find few. But in this case, one thing that was a totally new information for all of us, the archaeologists, was that we were able to find out how many coins came in each crate or each chest. Because the Portuguese records say that the ship sank with 9 boxes containing 18,000 cruzados. Obviously, you would immediately think, okay, 2,000 cruzados per box. That's easy. I mean, if you lose 9 chests and the total amount of money you lost, it was 18,000 cruzados, yeah, okay, it should be 2,000 per box. Just make it easy.
Yeah.
But the problem is that cruzados is not a coin. Cruzados is a currency. It was a way of talking about a certain value It's like, for instance, you say, I lost my wallet with $100. It could have been $100 note, 2 notes of 50, 5 notes of $20. So
Yeah.
the amount of notes is not clear if you said I lost $100. It could be.
So cruzados was an amount.
Cruzados was an amount, was a value. One cruzado.
It was a measurement.
Exactly, because it has a related value in gold. And for instance, one cruzado was 8.8 reales from the Spanish reales, meaning that one coin of 8 reales, it was almost one cruzado, was 0.9 cruzado. The amount of cruzados in a chest, it could have been made by a lot of combinations of different coins with
size coins.
Exactly, with different denominations. You would have 1 reales, 2 reales, 4 reales, 8 reales to make these 2,000 cruzados per box. Okay, we were able, because of the sheer amount of coins we found, and also because of the information we got in situ when we found the coins, that the chests were transporting 20,000 reales, so around 2.2 thousand, so 2,200 cruzados per box in small canvas bags of 550 cruzados each. Yeah, it's 4 of these boxes, because we had to make the calculation not only how many coins fit in a box, but how heavy that box would be for people to transport it. Because if you put it like it didn't do much calculation, it will end up being a box too big that they cannot move easily. So that numismatic information and historic information provided by the coin collection of the São José is the reason why the São José is in this list. I would make an episode on the São José. You will see many reasons why I love that wreck, but in this case, it's because this new information that provide about the coins. Number 7, the Baginda Wreck. We know it as the Baginda Wreck because it was found in the reef of Baginda in Indonesia, or Karandelapan, which means the 8 reefs. It's an area which is of very difficult navigation. And we found it.
I wonder why.
Yeah, the 8 reefs. It's a very complicated place, even today. I mean, for us to go there and make our exploration and stuff, it was an issue.
8 reefs doesn't sound like little reefs. It sounds like a lot of problem to navigate.
and I can tell you, I don't know why anyone put the name of 8 reefs. There are not 8 reefs. There are plenty of reefs. There is not 8.
There's more.
There are much more than 8. So if 8 sounds bad enough, there are much more than 8. So we found this wreck, and is in this list because it's the oldest shipwreck I have found. And this is something that, as an archaeologist, I have always a preference of older things. I have mentioned this in previous episodes. If you give me the chance of working in 2 wrecks, I will always try to select the older one, because the older the thing, the more interesting for you. But me...
Bigger challenge.
Yeah, bigger challenge. The chances of getting information that you don't know are high.
Yeah, it's bigger.
Because the older it is, the easier that the information has already disappeared or vanished or it's not. So also for me, being trained as an archaeologist and make my first years and my first wrecks in the Caribbean, so in America, and then going to Cape Verde and then to Mozambique. These are all colonial countries or areas. I mean, where the history of shipwrecks normally starts in 1492. So for us, like, the oldest thing you can find is something from 1492, because that's where the Europeans arrived with their ships and their cannons and everything. But when you start working in Southeast Asia, like we started working in Indonesia,
you realize that Europe is not the center of the universe.
and it's not the oldest thing, and it's not the oldest civilization, and it was not the most developed civilization at the time. And yeah, but one thing is knowing that. You know it because you read and you study and you know that. But one thing is reading about it, and another thing is finding a wreck that by the artifacts that it had, like in this case, the wreck had about 50,000 copper coins, Chinese copper coins, which most of them were dated in the Southern Tang period. This is from 937 to 976, so the year 900 something.
It already proves, it's like in your eyes proof, oh, they even already minted coins at a point that I don't even know if Europe had coins.
Romans had
Bueno,
coins.
true, yeah,
But,
true.
But not the reales that we were used to work with, you know, like minted in Spain or in the
and
Americas.
all irregular.
Yeah.
And all irregular
really
or
badly
all
done.
bumpy.
And then you have
Yeah,
this, and then you have this beautifully made Chinese copper coins full of details and stuff, minted somewhere in the 900. I mean, that's the 10th century. And me considering the 16th century like the oldest possibility of finding a shipwreck of that age, being thrown to the 10th century, it really shakes your ground. You have to regroup, study again, and look for help. You have to talk to, to my Asian colleagues, which for them,
of course,
is like, it's 10th century. What's the fuss?
Yeah, obviously.
What's the fuss? It's 10th century. Yeah, let's work it. So I had to go and seek advice on my Asian colleagues because I was facing something which was totally new to me, but totally means that it was like double the age of the shipwrecks I was used to find. And that took me entirely out of my comfort zone and the things that I knew. So the finding of this wreck of the 10th century, it really showed me how little we know. And everything that I learned from that wreck and that we managed to put together in a proper report and publication is the reason why, aside of the anecdotic part that is the oldest wreck I have found, is because it gave us a lot of new information, at least for us, that any other wreck before, precisely because of its age. So that's why it's in this list. Number 8 is the São Tomé dos Burgaleses from 1547, found in Mozambique with the cargo of copper ingots. And this was interesting and it has been very important because these semi-spherical copper ingots that we found in that ship left Lisbon in the way to Goa, India as well, with an export cargo of copper ingots and sank in Ilhas Primeiras in the Mozambican coast. We found the wreck, we found the cargo, and in the study of the cargo, in the research about the copper ingots, we found out that most of them bear the mark of the Fugger family. The Fugger family, I think they still exist today. It's a German family famous for mining and extracting copper and making steel. So it's in the heavy industry. As you can see, the ship sank in 1547, so it's a very long-lasting company. And the fact that was also from the Fugger family kind of guaranteed, because it has big examples of other exports of copper to the east, it was almost a guarantee that the good quality of the copper. During the research, we were also able to test those ingots and make metallurgic analysis or metallographic analysis of those ingots. And we were able to trace back the copper to the mine in which was extracted, which were in Newshall in Hungary, where the Fogger family had plenty of interest and they were exploiting those mines, and also in Slovakia. But the certainty of being able to identify the mine in which that copper came and was sent to India, it was a new information for our field. So that is the reason why the São Tomé dos Burgaleses is in this list. Number 9 comes the San Esteban, sunk in Brazil in 1583. And this is one of the examples. This wreck, it was not found by me. It was found by a Brazilian team of divers and spear fishermen that they came across the wreck. They found the site, and they obviously not being trained in archaeology, they couldn't know if there was an interesting wreck or it was just garbage on the seabed. So they called me, they organized for me to go there and check on the wreck and do an archaeological assessment of the site. And it it was a very good decision because the wreck of the San Esteban of 1583 is the oldest shipwreck found in South America under the line of the equator. So it was certainly a very interesting find. We were able to identify the wreck quite quickly because of, for instance, within other stuff that it has this beautiful bronze cannon that it has a date inscribed, which is 1565. So it has a lot of new scenes, like this cannon that was apparently made by Cristoforo Giordano. The Giordano family was a family of founders in Italy that made cannons along the 16th century and beginning of the 17th century. But the earlier job of Cristoforo Giordano was known to be from 1583. So this one, it was about 2 decades earlier, and it seems to be a work of Cristoforo Giordano. Every characteristics of the work of Cristoforo Giordano are in that canon. So that would also be a new information if, I mean, obviously this all needs more research, not now stating that it was made by Cristoforo Giordano, but there are great possibilities. Also because the San Esteban, it was called the provider, because the San Esteban had the unusual task of transporting stone blocks all the way from Spain to the Magellan Strait in the southern point of South America to build 2 fortresses there. One of the indications that we were in the presence of the San Esteban is because we found this beautiful stone slab with the shape of the coat of arms of Castilla and Leon, so this big with the crown and the lions and the castles, and that was meant to be put on top of the entry of the fortress. This you have seen certainly in many fortresses and old buildings, that you have the coat of arms in stone placed in the entry. So that we found that in the very first dives in the wreck. It was impressive because as is as is on relief in the stone, it was quite easy to spot. I mean, you put just some sand on top of it and you will see the relief. It's a really interesting find also because within the shield of Castilla and Leon, you could see in the center the scutcheon of the Portuguese arms. That means that that was made after 1580, because in 1580, Portugal and Spain had the 2 crowns and everything. So it could not be earlier than 1580. And then you have this other stone that we found that was without excavating the wreck, that was just swimming around and seeing, you know, discovering things that were partially exposed on the seabed. And then there is this other stone slab, which was triangular, had a lot of inscriptions in the stone that we, again, with a little bit of sand, we were able to read. And I will read it from the computer because I cannot remember. I mean, it's in Latin. I will not read it in Latin, but the translation into English. It says, Philip II, greatest Catholic king of the Indies and Spain, year 1582. So there we have everything. 1582 in this stone, 1565 in the canon, the coat of arms of Castilla and Leon with the Portuguese arms, which will put it after 1580, and the San Esteban, which was transporting these stones to make a fortress and sunk there in 1583.
I was going to ask if there is record to know when the San Esteban left.
Yep, in 1582.
Yeah, in 1582. No, because you were saying also from other episodes that it makes sense that cannons are a bit older. So I was trying to also fit, although you already know all this information, I was trying to fit all the dates together in my own brain to see how logical it could be.
That's a good question. It always puzzled us because, I mean, sometimes you see, okay, the ship wrecked in 1583. It could have stuff made in 1582 normally. But if you go deeper into the research, you may find that the ship left Spain in 1581. So it wouldn't have anything made in 1582 in Spain.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's part of the research.
Interesting.
So all this new information that the San Esteban gave us in Brazil is the reason why the San Esteban is in this list. And number 10 is kind of obvious because the Subang wreck in Indonesia, I have mentioned it in other episodes, it has the largest amount of Ming porcelain ever found. And that is not the reason why it's in the list, because that would be top 10, you know, the largest or the biggest. The porcelain itself, it was not remarkable, not with the quality of the Espadarte, for instance. Yes, it is a lot of porcelain, it's incredibly the amount of porcelain that this shipwreck has, but the porcelain itself is quite mundane, it's quite common. It has 2 or 3 outstanding pieces, but within that entire amount is something, I mean, the porcelain is not the reason why this ship
it's not the relevant point.
Yeah, it's not why this ship is in the list. The main reason is that this porcelain was produced between 1580 and 1620, roughly. That's the Wang Li period, the Emperor Wang Li period in China, because those are from the Wang Li Emperor time. And the amount, the size of the hill of porcelain which is on the seabed covering the remains of the wreck. Remember that I have mentioned this wreck was not excavated. So we didn't get to the hull, to the wood structure. And because of the size, it was 48 meters long. This hill was 48 meters long times 23 meters wide and 8 meters high. So it is all this of blue and white, and it's sitting on top of a wood structure we haven't been able to study, but it seems to all of us, I have talked to my Asian colleagues, to all of us it looks like an unusual large size for a ship of the time. So actually I was very interested in excavating the wreck, not because of the porcelain, because I needed to take the porcelain away to get to the wood structure of the ship to see which ship it is, because there are...
Yeah, and where was it going and why so much?
Yeah, well, I think it sunk because of that so much, or that so many porcelain probably. But
the reason why it sunk, but why did it have so much on it is what I'm saying. Yeah.
Maybe greed. They were going to a market, they were about to sell this porcelain, so they tried to maximize the cargo capacity.
To be faster.
Whatever. But it was an unusually large ship. I know that there are some legends around in the internet and here and there of these gigantic Chinese chunks and everything. Well, okay, we use archaeological proof of things, you know, archaeological confirmation of these kind of things. And so far, no ship of that size from the Chinese and between 1580 and 1620 has been found. So for us, it would have been great to be able to excavate that wreck and answer some of these questions about this sheer size of the ship apparently. So that's mainly not because of the porcelain I mentioned, it's not because of the big amount of porcelain, but of potentially the big size of the ship. That's why it's in this list. I hope you enjoyed the video. If you like it, please give it a like, share it with your friends, subscribe to the channel if you haven't done it, and let's keep on diving.